Anyway,
All
I'll
right.
taste this first and make
Yeah,
sure I don't
sure.
burn every part of my mouth.
That's a good plan.
Just a little.
Order my mat temp. They know what that is here. It's one ice cube. It's just one ice cube so that I
One
can
ice
drink
cube.
it.
That gonna work?
Oh, it's great.
Okay.
It actually is delicious.
Okay,
Mm.
excellent. Excellent. Well, welcome to Coffee with the Mayor. We are excited to have our 8th episode. And today we have with us Kimberly Gencur-Svaty. And we're so thankful that you could make the time and come down to see us here in Hillsboro today.
Oh, I'm thrilled to get to do it and thrilled to get to be here. So it's a beautiful day. It was a great day to make my way on over. So thank you for having me.
Hey, you're very welcome.
And to get to be at Rhubarb.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
It's
It's a cool place. And, I kind of I don't know if you noticed, but we're kind of between two ferns, if you've ever seen.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
like in Only Murders.
That's right. Yeah, so we'll try to keep it a little bit out of the Galifianakis range, but we're going to have fun anyway.
Love it.
Yeah.
Just don't also make me consecutively hotter hot wings.
No, today.
Yeah, we do like to have fun, and so we hope you'll have fun right here with us. Okay, we're ready. We're ready to get into our programming, and the first thing we always do is Mayor's mug shots.
Perfect.
So what we want to talk about is what you've got in your mug. This nice, wonderful Coffee with the Mayor mug, official, yeah,
and signed, nonetheless.
No doubt.
I chose hot chocolate, which I know is not coffee or tea,
Mhm.
but it was cold when I
Yeah.
woke up this morning. It was 30 degrees,
Right.
and I kind of haven't gotten warm all day because it was 93 degrees 3 days ago.
It sure was.
And so the house is still on air conditioning,
Right.
and I just have been cold. So
Okay.
this is a perfect way to warm my innards.
Nothing wrong with that. It
Solid.
works really well with a mug, right?
It
Yeah,
does.
there you go.
And
Yeah.
it's lovely. This is a lovely drink.
Matt,
What
what do we got
about you?
going today? I think you switched us up today.
Yeah, I varied off. Of course, my normal is an Americano decaf. This is an oat milk banana bread latte decaf. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a lot.
Mouthful.
It's a mouthful and it's delicious. They make the banana bread syrup stuff here. That's Elisa's thing. She
Mhm.
does. It's amazing. It's way sweeter than what I normally get. But for afternoon pick me up, it's a good deal. And without the caffeine, I had to make it. They usually use the insomniac beans, which are the
Mhm.
white beans that have twice as much caffeine in them.
Yeah.
So we 86 that and we went with the decaf, and it's still really good. I highly recommend. It's on the fall menu, and so that's why it felt like the first day of fall.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
you said,
It kinda did.
3 days
It was.
the other day, and this
Kinda
morning,
did.
yeah, it's super.
I broke out the flannel shirt.
You broke out
I'm
the
telling you, because it just seemed like a flannel shirt today.
It's that kind of day, man.
We all have on our fall earth tones.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna let people guess what I'm drinking, but it doesn't count because everybody knows that the mayor drinks coffee flavored coffee. And I just find when you come to a place like Rhubarb that has the traffic, because they get a lot of coffee traffic, and so if you want to get your coffee and get in and get out, you get coffee flavored coffee. I'm good, and mine's definitely leaded. I love that coffee. We're going to move now into an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So, Kimberly, the floor is yours.
Give us your history.
Yeah,
Tell us what do you do?
So I have to kind of chuckle about that because I have these two last names that no one can pronounce. I can barely pronounce them. And so typically I'm Kimberly from Kansas.
There you go.
Yeah, Kimberly from Kansas.
Easy to remember.
Easy to remember.
Yep.
But no, my name is Kimberly Gencur-Svaty. The Gencur is my maiden name. Swaty is my married name. Both names were Czech, so or Czech. And I grew up on the eastern side of the state and was lucky enough to marry someone from the central portion of the state. And I have spent the last 17 years learning about agriculture communities or agrarian-based communities and rural Kansas, and have been extremely grateful for that opportunity to not only to just learn, but to become intimately familiar with it. My husband convinced me that we needed to start our own farm. He was a fifth generation farmer. I was a fifth generation city girl. My family came to Kansas City in the 1820s, so even before the city was a city. And that's what I knew. But it has given me a tremendous appreciation for several things. One, how difficult it is to farm and to ranch, and the market forces at play, not just even like locally or regionally or domestically, but globally. And then it's also taught me to value the land in a way that I would not have had the opportunity to learn about and experience growing up in the city. So I'm extremely grateful for that as well. We now have 4 young children. They have grown up in a blended environment, if you will, in the sense that we spend a lot of time in the city and we spend a lot of time on our farm. And I'm very grateful for them to have that full-fledged opportunity. I'm the 3rd generation entrepreneur in my family. I'm the first woman entrepreneur, which I'm kind of proud of. And I started my company, Gencur-Svaty Public Affairs, 18 years ago. Largely having worked in the energy and telecommunications space. And I worked for an energy company that really interacted with communities, and I handled the legislative work and the regulatory work and a lot of the community relations work. And then there was not a whole lot of that opportunity, both with from a clean energy standpoint. There was no one doing any of that.
Right.
And then I've been fortunate enough all along the way to get to work with all of our municipally owned utilities, electric, natural gas, water, and wastewater. And the two blend so beautifully. But then as I moved into more rural areas, the lifeblood that the utilities are to smaller communities, every bit as much as schools and access to healthcare.
Sure.
And so that has been something that I've loved doing, and I love the people that I get to work with, such as yourself. Like, you really day in and day out want to work to make the life of your community and the people that live in it better. And I very much believe in that same philosophy, both for communities, but then also my state.
Great.
And from the clean energy side of things, again, that experience with the land I get very frustrated when I hear companies that come in from out of state that are just like, well, this is just what needs to happen. I'm like, So it's made me able to stand up for my state and for our communities in a way that probably many others aren't able to. And so there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And if you're not doing it the right way, and the way that Kansans want to be treated and the respect, then, I'm not really interested in having you do business here.
Right, sure.
So my company really works to do the legislative work, the regulatory work. If you want to build projects in the state of Kansas, regardless of kind of what type that project is, whether it's in energy or agriculture or water, then we will work with you to help make sure that you're building a project that works well for Kansas.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I had the pleasure of traveling with you this last what was it, March, February, March?
Late February.
Yeah, late February. We're at the American Public Power Association legislative route.
Yes.
And I got to follow Kimberly around Washington, D.C. And it was fun in the sense that it was my first time to really be in the halls of Congress. And you're, of course, a well-traveled person in that space. Clearly, you're very well recognized and very well respected. So that was fun in going into our legislators' offices and sitting down and talking to them. You could see the respect that Kimberly has that she gets from them, and it's well deserved. So that's one of the things that we as municipals and cities cannot do. We cannot go contribute to political campaigns. We cannot go in there and use finances as an influence tool.
No.
And so we really much rely on you and the work that you do on our behalf to get that message across to our legislative body. I have to say that I think this past year, or this past legislative session, I have written more often to the governor and to our representatives than I ever felt the need to before. And it's always ironic to me because what's one of the first things legislators complain about? Federal government,
Washington.
right? Oh,
Right.
Washington's telling us what to do. And yet then they turn right around and try to dictate at the local level. And of course, that just seems like it's just all running downhill sometimes. So
That can definitely be a point of frustration, and just the irony of that. I feel extremely lucky because working with municipal utilities, we are constrained in the political realm. I don't necessarily know that that's a bad thing. I think if I had the opportunity, me personally, I might like to change a few things about the way campaigns are run and about the way campaigns are financed, but it falls back on the communities and the opportunity to get to tell the wonderful stories that are happening in every single community all the time. And so the more I get to interact with our communities and the more that I get to learn about all of the different things that they have going on, one, I never cease to be amazed. But then two, the excitement that I feel to get to help be a conduit between, the communities and not just the local legislators, but other legislators. It's really special.
Yeah. We wanted to talk about a number of things that kind of fit into that political spectrum, if that's okay.
That's great.
So with the upcoming election, how would you describe the current political climate in Kansas? And what are some of the key issues you see shaping voter decisions, particularly in rural areas?
So the current political climate in Kansas is divided. Just probably like we see at the national level. I would say that it's not as cantankerous at the national level. I think people are very involved this cycle, for different reasons, a whole suite of reasons. So that is good.
Yeah.
Anytime you have voters that are interested and engaged, that's really important for a healthy democracy. The worst thing that we can have is apathy, voter apathy and voter disinterest. And so one, the fact that people are taking time, paying attention. So that's a very good thing. We are not, so from a national standpoint, Kansas is not really a bellwether state. It's largely, when you look at every single map, assumed that Kansas is going to go, one particular way. What's interesting is watching in Nebraska, there is one congressional district, CD2, that is looking like it is in play, if you will. It could go one way or the other. And so that's been fascinating, watching the resources at a national level go to maybe we should pay a little attention to CD2 in Nebraska of all states. But all the love, of course, is being sent to Pennsylvania right now from, both sides. I think the number is something like $350 million has been spent in the last 3 weeks in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
I cannot imagine.
Staggering amount of money, but yeah.
It is a staggering amount of money. And then the digital buy, I think is upwards of 50 million from one campaign. I mean, just huge sums of money. So I don't know how you have your eyes open and aren't bombarded with messaging, with ads, texts in some way, shape, or form. So I'm honestly kind of glad that we don't have any of that. So I think in Kansas, there are not as many contested races in your rural areas. There's largely kind of one contested race in the Sedgwick County area. Otherwise, most are, kind of largely known which way they're going to go, or there may not be a race at all.
Right.
In fact, I think already a majority of our legislature either didn't have an election or had a primary.
Yeah.
And
they're finished now.
so-
They've gotten past that part. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So we do know a large chunk of the legislature. I think we're anticipating something like 10 new senators roughly. So about a fourth of the Senate will be new. And typically in Kansas, we see the legislature turn over every 5 years roughly. I mean, there's a couple of legislators that'll stay in office for longer than that 5 year, but the average term for legislators is basically 5 years. So I've never really felt like we needed to have term limits because we kind of do that on our own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The House will be a little bit different this cycle. We'll probably see somewhere between 25 to 33% new members in the House. The key and where we are seeing national money come into the state of Kansas is, so there's the governor, Democrat, Laura Kelly, and then our legislature is comprised of, there's a majority Republicans,
Right.
and it's actually even more than a majority. It's what you would call a supermajority. So that means that there are enough votes on any given day, ostensibly, not on every issue, but to override any gubernatorial veto. So there is a push from national money to either hold the supermajority or break the supermajority. So we are seeing money come in from that standpoint, but it's really coming in about maybe 5 Senate seats and maybe 10 House seats.
Okay.
So
That's not a lot.
Not a
Yeah,
lot.
not a lot.
and what's interesting is nationally, that kind of jives with what we're seeing nationally, and that's largely due to gerrymandering.
Right.
That districts are carved to be largely one way or largely the other, and there's very few districts that are ever really in play. So even at the national level, if you're talking about 435 House seats that are up, and then roughly a third of the Senate, so roughly 480 seats are open. And just a handful of those are in play, like
Yeah.
maybe not even 10%.
Mm.
And so in Kansas, the numbers are fairly similar,
Mhm.
which is interesting, I think.
So we start thinking about that. We look at statewide races. Governor Kelly, obviously, she is a Democrat who wins in a quote unquote red state.
Mhm.
As we've kind of gotten more condensed and the population centers around more of the population centers, you get 7 counties effectively that are growing at a larger rate. Do you think that Kansas is becoming more purple or less red, or are the demographics shifting with that too?
I think it's more of a demographic change.
Okay.
So in certain areas of the state, there's there's not really a change. I mean, it's still
Same
largely,
as it is, yeah.
but then as the urban areas are growing, that's where you're seeing changes from like a voter registration standpoint or whatnot. So there are portions of the state that are shifting purple, certainly inside the 435 loop in Johnson
Right.
County, if not blue, honestly.
Yeah.
But Kansas is interesting. We are the only state in the nation that has elected 3 female governors. And we were the first to do so as well. We were also the first state to have a female mayor, 30 years before women had the right to vote. She was the mayor of Argonia. So we have this interesting kind of history of electing female governors, even a U.S. senator. We've not been as strong in that area, but we still had one. I mean, we still had, Senator Kassebaum, which is interesting. So I think it's more than anything, not so much about being a woman per se, but just about being like the type of candidate, pragmatic, straight shooter, willing to, work across the aisle, working with everyone, being honest.
Yeah.
I think those are all attributes that are
what you would normally think of when someone thinks of Kansas, right? Like
Yes,
those are the
hardworking.
things that they associate with Kansas.
Yeah.
For me, it seems like we've been talking a little bit about political parties, but in my 7 years as mayor and being exposed to the statewide political landscape a little more than I was before, it almost to me is the division is not necessarily red or blue, it's rural and urban. I mean, that's where I see the difference. And the rural areas, are continuing to depopulate as the urban areas are populating. And that imbalance, impacts small communities, rural communities like us a lot more. And it makes me kind of smile to think about the group that we were in when we were in Washington together, and we were going around to see the different legislators. And we had a gentleman in our group, and I won't give his name or even his affiliation, but let's just say he was from inside that 435 corridor, and he never left a meeting without reminding that legislator that his area of the state pretty much drove the entire state.
Right.
And I just kind of had to smile and shake my head a little bit, but that's maybe not necessarily untrue. I mean, they do carry a lot more,
So
power than it seems. Man, maybe I'm wrong.
I know it's so this is one of the educations, and I can say that plural, even though I know that's not really a word, but it's like a genuine education and a series of them that I've been lucky enough to have. And I truly wish that everyone had the opportunity to have this type of education. So two things about political parties. I agree that it's the party system kind of drives me nuts in the way that it gets in the way of good public policy making. And it's fed by our campaign finance system. And so I would really love to break both of those down and rebuild them in a form that would be truly good for democracy. But that is probably a topic for another conversation. And I don't know the answer to that. I just know that both of those creatures are a problem for a good, healthy democracy. But to the rural urban divide, it is one that people acknowledge is there and acknowledge is probably growing. And I, came from an urban area and, came from an area of the state where, I kind of joke with my husband that I'm actually not joking, but I would say this. I just didn't know. I didn't know.
Sure.
And you can't know it until you've had the opportunity to really experience it. And so, yes, we do have economic engines in the state, and they are kind of centrally located. And then we have other economic engines that are much more diffuse and all around. And it is imperative that we recognize that, yes, you can have your epicenters, but that we are all swimming up the same stream. And we must work together to solve problems like, with depopulation, it's more difficult to finance anything.
Yeah,
right,
for sure.
And so how do you maintain essential services in a smaller community or in a larger community when the demographic is changing so much? And so how do you build, wastewater infrastructure for a population of 143 without, crippling that community?
Sure. Yeah.
And so what is it that we need to do at the state level? How do we need to think about some of the issues that can address the ever-changing demographic? That's a challenge.
Well, yeah, and it's a challenge that we face right here in Marion County. Our population continues to go down, but yet the need for services continues to go up.
Right.
Infrastructure is aging out. It needs to be replaced. And, I think we have found some ways to address that. We actually collaborate with the city of Peabody we provide their treated water.
Oh,
So there's a pipeline that goes from Hillsboro to Peabody, and we provide the people of Peabody with treated water. that we sell to them. And then we also have been supporting, we just signed
Right, yeah.
an MOU to support their water infrastructure when we can. You know, if they need people, you know, they've been having trouble finding people.
Right.
You know, that's
Going through
another.
a little rough patch, so we're helping them out. The neighborly thing to do.
Yes,
This is
neighborly
it
thing to
is.
do.
It's the right
It's
thing
the
to do.
Kansas thing to do.
But that concept of cooperation and collaboration really has to, I think, expand going forward. And the challenge is just like when we consolidated our school district. You know, we had a couple smaller communities that were not very happy about losing their schools,
Right.
as you can imagine. And, you know, we have managed to make that consolidation work. But yet in our small county, we still have 5 school districts.
Right. Right.
And so, I mean, you know, how many is too many? I don't know. And you know, do we want to be the community that doesn't have a school? Well, absolutely not. So those are the challenges that we face and we have to work through. And your comment about being civil and finding ways to connect and work together, you know, extremely important.
Well, and it's no different than when it comes to, for example, school finance. The needs in Johnson County or in Sedgwick County or Douglas County, I mean, just in those 3 counties alone, or Riley County, are so different.
Right.
Just in those 4 counties.
Right.
Yeah.
So and then you have communities that are working toward consolidation, or they're working toward keeping their schools open. There was huge discussions in Ellsworth County about keeping you know, Wilson schools open, and you know, groups coming in from outside that were trying to dictate and you know, where and how that consolidation should occur, if it should occur. There were some scare tactics put forth and a campaign. I mean, so it was just, I'm like, no. Everyone needs to, we need to respect that different communities' needs are different, and work again to try and create solutions that meet as best as possible the needs of the very different communities without one side telling the other what to do.
Yeah.
Stepping back from national politics and looking more at the state level, what do you think some of the upcoming priorities are going to be in this upcoming legislative session?
Oh, well, I think that it probably depends on whether or not the Republican supermajority stands.
Stays intact, yeah.
Governor Kelly has said no more tax incentives. That the tax package that was done last legislative session is probably going to get us from a fiscal standpoint maybe a little too close to the edge.
Sure.
So that's what she's said. Others have come out and said we need significant property tax relief. I've seen and heard information about taking the corporate income tax rate to 0. So, but I think I just think there's going to be a lot of conversation about taxes. We can't get out of election cycles. So we literally the day after our election in Kansas, that we will begin the next gubernatorial cycle. And so Governor Kelly will be termed out, and there will be a variety of parties jockeying for who is going to be kind of the front runner to take up that mantle, both on the Republican side and on the Democratic side. So I think that there will be a lot of conversation around things that would be election issue oriented.
So are there going to be anything, you know, of course, from our perspective and how you interact with us on our behalf, a lot of times it's utility related issues, you know, Kansas Municipal Utilities, KPP Energy. You do a great job advocating for us on those respects. So what can we look forward to in those spaces this next year?
So I think we're going to have a pretty busy year.
Okay.
Last legislative session, this is more on the water side, but to the water training certifications. I mean, We have almost 100 communities that do not have on staff a certified operator. And so KMU works diligently to work with communities that have certified operators or individuals that have retired that are still certified and maintaining their certification to help, serve on standby
Right.
with those communities. Otherwise, you can't operate.
Yeah.
Right.
So we put forth a piece of legislation last session that made it through the House almost unanimously. I think it may have had like one no vote. And then it just got stopped in the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee. That piece of legislation is incredibly important to us us as in the state of Kansas, as in municipal utilities, being able to train and certify our water and wastewater operators. So instead of having to go to a regional testing center,
Right.
like if you're in Liberal, you have to go to the regional testing center in Emporia, and then you're paying a fee. This is an online based test that you can take, whenever. You're saving all of that time and effort. So basically it's a 2-day drive there and back that you're saving. And then it comes with a national certification. So we can pull from water and wastewater operators from other states to come to Kansas if we have that reciprocity system in place, and we don't have it right now. So that's a really important priority that Josh and I will work on this legislative session with hopefully others to pass that. On the electric side, we're hearing that legislation called right of first refusal will likely be back. This is legislation that largely allows the incumbent utilities to build transmission. And there's lots of different iterations of what this bill looks like. And so we've yet to see what this upcoming sessions version will look like. As a general rule, municipal utilities, we've had to fight and claw in order to be recognized as legitimate transmission owners and capable of building transmission projects on our own. And so we're very cognizant of anything that might impede that or whittle that away or make it more difficult for us. We would probably actually like to see some sort of language that would really ensconce in statute what has been confirmed at the regulatory level, which is that we do have the right to build transmission.
Yeah.
There will be a lot of conversation about eminent domain.
It's a fun topic.
Everyone
wants to talk about taking people's property.
The federal government's national interest electric transmission corridors, NITC, has definitely whipped up a frenzy, particularly in the western portion of the state. Most of what has been said and discussed is just misinformation. It's actually simply a proposal at this point. I doubt there's 10 proposed corridors. I doubt that Kansas is even selected in one of the final designations. Nevertheless, there is this fear among many that the federal government is going to come in and take a 400-mile long, 5-mile wide swath of the state and take it out of, they're just going to take it for themselves. So a lot of conversations about eminent domain. But hopefully it's a good opportunity, though, for utilities to explain that is absolutely not how we work when we're building infrastructure. That's not how that happens. That is not how that happens. So I think we'll see quite a bit of that.
Kind of going back to the water operator thing. I don't know if people understand how much it takes to actually certify somebody in the current system.
My goodness.
It's
no, they don't.
Unbelievable how long it takes to actually certify somebody, and they have to set for these tests, and oftentimes the tests either aren't relevant to what they're doing, or they give you study guides and they're not the same things that are on the study guide. The fail rate is really high for these. So, you could have 60-70% failure rates on some of these tests, the way they're administered now. And so just changing the way it's administered, coming into the 20th century even would be good. It's kind of embarrassing how the state does it. And they've had this statute where the cap for the fee has been set for
30 years.
And so they can't go beyond that. And so there's some things that prevent them from doing these. So you have all these people having to come to the centers, and just no one does that anymore.
I
And
know,
so
right.
it just needs to be modernized and changed. But it's important for people to understand that it takes up to it takes a year at least to have somebody operator certified. And that's, progressive on the levels that you need. So City of Hillsboro, to operate our water system, you need a class 3 license.
Class 3.
And if they change the designation, you have to go to class 4,
Right.
which is real hard to get. So,
Well,
it
and
puts a lot of pressure on
we
smaller utilities.
from KDHE about, many more different regulations coming down potentially in the next decade. And so, yes, it wouldn't surprise me if you all wouldn't need a class 4 operator at
So
some
how
point.
do you do that?
Mhm.
Our operator, God bless her, she's got 25 years of service and wants to retire someday.
And you will not let her?
Will not.
Huh?
And I was like, well, we don't have anybody to replace you, and I don't know where we're going to find them, because right now there are, I don't know how many positions open looking for people. So, well, you said 100 and how many with no operator? 100, yeah.
Or one that's in training.
In training, yeah.
Mhm.
And there are rules with that too, so you can't have
Right.
more than a successive year. Yeah, there's a whole set of rules with that too. Now I understand the rules, I get the regulations, because we want to turn out water that is appropriate for everybody, meets all the standards. But at some point you have to say enough. Let's figure out something that makes more sense. And that's always a frustrating point for me when we deal with the legislature. Sometimes there's no perspective, and so that's why having someone in public affairs lobbying for this type of thing is really an important asset. And educating more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
my mom was a teacher for decades, and that is more than anything how I view my job is, you need to understand, like you need to learn. And so I've got to tell you all sides. That's the only way you're going to learn. It's not going to do you any good if you don't know the full story.
right.
So I don't care what the issue is. So, but yes, it is very much educating. So we will probably be calling on you.
More than happy to. As you said, we did more of that last year than we did any time that I can remember. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then speaking of engagement, people a lot of times in small communities don't feel like we have a lot of power, that we don't feel like, we're heard. What are some of the ways that people in rural areas, small communities like Hillsboro, can have an impact?
So I've been part of many different projects over the years, some of which are strongly supported by communities, some of which are, it creates a division. And then things kind of go back to normal. But what I think I'm kind of seeing and hearing, particularly in smaller communities, and actually now that I say that, even in more urban communities, we are really disassociated from one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we're very distant from one another. And so my husband gave a speech one time, and he talked about how, growing up in a church. I mean, my husband's a Democrat, and he's grew up in a strongly Republican area. But he would, grow up in church, and like, you didn't know who was this or who was that or whatnot. And it didn't matter because you sat next to one another in the pews, and then you had the potluck. And I don't care if it's church or if it's Rotary or, insert whatever organization or community event. I was at an event the other evening that was a wonderful community event. It was excellent, but I saw more people on their phones scrolling, even at the football game. And they're just scrolling. And so you can't just like strike up a conversation with people when whoever's sitting by you is just scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that I think, whether you're in a rural area or you're in an urban area or anything, is to put the phone down. Like, no joke, put it down and engage in a conversation.
Yeah.
And find out, like, so what do you think about this? Well, I'm not so sure about it. Well, why? Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. And so then you can kind of begin this conversation about, well, what would we like to see? If not this, then that, or anything. And so that, I think, is going to be a real significant problem. And what I found is that at many of the community meetings or public meetings that are put forth for when infrastructure is being built, it's the first time in a long time that people have talked to their neighbors. And so they're more like social events. And then unfortunately, they kind of, can get riled up one way or the other because they're interacting. Whereas you wouldn't necessarily get so riled up if you were just talking to each other at the grocery store.
Sure.
So I think that that's got to be part of it, is that we have to learn how to, it's easy to say like to slow down, but it's not even really slowing down. It's unplugging and it's re-engaging. It's putting the phone down and looking around your community and saying, what can I do? What should we be talking about?
Sure.
As opposed to reading a snapshot headline about whatever's going on and, whatever anaconda hunt is happening in Florida.
Right.
So that's
race machine. You got to keep feeding the beast,
So this is, I've literally been thinking a lot. I'm finishing my PhD.
Okay.
So I think about, probably think about things. I know I've been thinking about things in a different way of late. And I'm very happy about that. But part of that has been like, how do we re-engage? How do we work to accomplish things?
Yep. And I think you're right. I think it has to be deliberate.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, let's just be honest. The whole scrolling thing, the whole social media thing was designed by people to get inside your brain, if you will, and impact your limbic system and really, almost get people addicted to this. I mean, those are addictive kind of behaviors in the end. And so, we're going to have to figure out a way. Our actual school system this year took the kids' phones away during class. Can you believe it or not?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I bet that was a whole thing, but honestly,
it's a thing.
It's The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
Fabulous book. Probably does a fantastic job of summarizing a lot of the recent literature and science on like what phones are doing to our minds if you don't put it down. And I mean, I look at our kids' minds and they're not even remotely close to being developed.
Right.
And so I bet that was a hard thing to do, but I think it's, for the best for them to learn. Yeah. Otherwise, we can spend all the money in the world on school finance and it won't matter because their brains are totally rewired.
That's true.
Same with adults.
There you go.
Yeah.
What are some emerging challenges and opportunities you see on the horizon for rural Kansas?
Well, I think Kansas, we used to have this tagline that was Kansas as big as you think, and people kind of love to hate on the tagline, but it's actually, I think, probably pretty apropos. It is as big as you think. Yeah. So I think the sky is the limit in that regard. But coming down a notch, we're limited only in our scope and imagination, but then by the dollar. And so there's, a recognition that whether, I don't care if it's Johnson County or Sedgwick or in rural areas, we're fighting for the same types of jobs and the same types of investments, or we're, fighting for SRF funding that's limited in nature or bill funding. And so I hasten to say it, but, finding the competitive advantage of each particular area and then working as part of a bigger area, I think will do a lot of good because we don't necessarily need each community to have the same 10 different things. But if we are, and some of this is happening, I mean, I-70 did a considerable amount to regionalize things, but if what are the strengths of those particular areas and make sure that, in that county or within a radius that it's all there and accounted for, and the opportunities exist, I think that will really help propel us forward. And because we're all chasing the same dollar, so maybe let's not all chase the same exact dollar, but think if there's 10 different avenues, if my strength is here and yours is there and yours is there, then let's, put together the wheel and we'll all go out after a different spoke.
You know, we mentioned earlier the collaboration that we're doing with Tabor College with the Central Kansas Entrepreneurship Center. And we really feel like that has been the engine. You mentioned you're an entrepreneur, has been an engine that has driven the economy of Hillsboro in particular. And we have some companies that started out as small mom and pop, and now Barkman Honey, for example, is one of the largest honey processors in the United States.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And then sitting next door to them is a company called Container Services that blow molds their containers and containers for other companies that grew up as a result of that. And we've had a number of things, you know, happen like that.
That's wonderful.
We're very strong educationally. You can actually get a master's degree and not leave the city limits. You can go from pre-K to master's level without leaving town. And I mean, not getting online either. That's all in person.
Yeah, all in person.
Which is, I mean, online is a very helpful tool, but there's nothing better than being in a classroom, looking eye to eye at folks for engaged learning.
So again, that's we're trying to figure out how to promote that, how to enhance that, if you will, because we know that's been our success in the past. You know, if we can enhance that successful past behavior and get some scale and do some of that stuff, that's really what we're hoping for.
And
future
it
state
drives things like, you know, rhubarb coffee, and, you know, this is the type of institution, if you will, that's incredibly important to a vibrant community.
Right.
And so then, you know, you see more offshoots from this, and that's then again how you grow.
Well, this is where people come to do that interacting and not on their phone.
Fabulous.
It's a great community hub, I'd say. Yeah, you see people having conversations, and we were in here Saturday, and we had to leave because I had stuff to do, and the line was so long that it was back here, and you could hear everybody having a nice, beautiful Saturday morning conversation. So, yeah.
And I think that's also, you know, how we begin to heal politics.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put your phone down and you stop seeing whatever, you know, slanted headline or whatnot, and you just talk to your neighbor, then you find out that you actually have a lot more in common with one another than you do dividing you.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I think it's time to move on to section 2, which is new for this episode, but we're going to do something we're going to call roast or toast. Okay. So this is going to be your opportunity to choose whether to roast a common industry practice, or we'd like, you know, or toast in some way a recent success. What do you think, a roast or a toast?
Oh my goodness. Well, that, I mean, like, am I utility specific or am I political space?
It's wide open.
There's probably more I could roast in the political space. There's probably a few things I could toast. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's kind of a roast and a toast in the sense that water certification bill was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a great bill. And so a bit of a roast for the fact that that didn't happen as it should have happened. But a toast certainly to the effort, and then a big toast to what will come for 2025, which will be, you know, double downing on what we do and getting it across the finish line. So then hopefully we can, you know, really help our water and wastewater training process.
So last we have something new called hot takes. And this is, Matt, you want to explain the hot take?
So what we have here is a jar full of hot take questions.
Oh, you guys are so much fun.
Yeah, I know. It's good. This is
good. I'm a little nervous.
So you got an entire jar here. So what you do is you're going to dig around in here, pull out a question.
Okay.
You're going to take it, you're going to read it out loud. We're all going to answer it. We have no idea what it's going to be. Fate's going to decide for us what this is going to be. So, Kimberly, you get to be the first hot take pull. The answer first.
Okay, this is actually funny. What is the weirdest gift you've ever received or given? Oh, I'm going to go with the received. So my husband for Christmas one year, there's actually it's a two-parter.
Okay.
Gave me a stool. That was my Christmas present.
Oh, sweet.
Stool.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later was my birthday, and I got a laundry basket. So those are my two weirdest gifts that I've ever received.
What's the message? I mean, what's going on there?
So
Did you want a stool?
Yeah, no,
no.
not at
Okay,
all.
yeah.
Here, honey, here's your stool.
Right. Did he make it?
No,
No. Okay.
No. We had a son, and I enjoyed giving him, little baths. He had just gotten old enough to move into the bathtub, and I was like, kind of squatting down. He's like, "Well, I thought you
gotcha,
like a stool." I'm like,
So he's trying to be thoughtful.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's
Right.
thoughtful. Get very
like,
practical.
so maybe something to go along with that stool might be nice. But anyway,
Sure.
so it's a seated stool, and it's still in use in our house 14 years later.
Nice.
And then the laundry basket houses all of my boys' laundry.
Okay.
So those are the two weirdest gifts I've
And
ever
they're still in
received.
service.
They're still in service.
Okay.
So
And they both have a story.
they do.
Yeah.
And we, the gift giving has improved.
That's good.
Super practical.
Yeah,
Love the
super
practical.
The weirdest gift I ever got was from my mother-in-law, and it was for my birthday, and it was a book on vinegar.
Oh,
A vinegar book.
was it the Billionaire's Vinegar?
No.
No. Okay.
No, it was
So it wasn't
all
that
of the uses and purposes and possible applications that you could use vinegar for.
Do you use a lot of vinegar?
I do
In your
not.
life?
I do not. I do
Even
not.
with all this knowledge.
And I'm not even embarrassed to say that I don't have that book.
Shh.
I think it got donated
Oh my heavens.
somewhere.
Well, somebody's learning
Somebody's
valuable.
Sorry.
valuable
vinegar
lessons about
lessons.
vinegar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
I love it.
All right, the weirdest gift I ever got. This is actually I got when I was working in South Hutchinson, Kansas. Little known fact. I'll talk a little bit about South Hutch. Across the street from City Hall is Doskasil Foods. It used to be Doskasil Foods. Larry Doskasil started it. They made all the pizza toppings for Pizza Hut.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So
Okay.
huge plant. Sold it to Tyson. Larry rode off in the sunset, did a bunch of different things. So every year he would come in. My first year working in South Hutch, I come into my office and there is a 3.5 foot long stick of pepperoni sitting on my desk. So Larry, what he would do, he didn't own the place anymore, but he still had a lot of connections with that.
Too.
Yeah. So he would go in there and he would take these entire sticks of pepperoni off the things. They would be 3.5 feet. There'd be
Oh my gosh.
140 of them on a rack, and then it's basically 3 football fields stacked on top of each other of pepperoni they make at one time, right? So he would just grab one and he would come into the office and everybody in the office would get 3.5 feet of pepperoni. And I tell you, that's the best pepperoni I've ever had.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah, and he had like a little card that came with it that told you how to store your pepperoni and how it works, and as it dries out, it gets better and all this stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, so that is the
That's
weirdest
pretty
gift.
weird,
That's
but
pretty
cool.
Cool,
That's a cool
and,
gift.
and also functional. I could
Yeah.
feed my family or a family of 50 with pepperoni.
That's a lot of pepperoni
Yeah.
pizzas on the uni.
That's a lot. That's a lot of pepperoni pieces, but it was good to just eat. I mean, we would just get it, and and it got to the point where everybody in the house looked forward to getting the 3.5 foot long pepperoni every Christmas. It was almost like a turkey. Some people get turkeys and stuff, but we got pepperoni.
Now we know what we need to get them for Christmas.
There you go. That's
pepperoni.
it.
Yeah.
I'll take any smoked meat product that you want to provide me. That is an excellent gift. That's just speaks to my heart. That's my love
I love
language.
that.
I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Coffee with the Mayor. Kimberly, I can't thank you enough for coming and
Thank you for
visiting.
having me.
If somebody wants to connect with you or Gencur-Svaty, how would they do that?
Oh, yeah, well, reach out to either one of you.
Okay.
Or online, Gencur-Svaty.com. G is in girl, E is in egg, N is in Nancy, C is in cat, U is in Ursula, R is in Sam, S is in Victor, A is in Apple, T is in Tom, Y is in yellow.com.
There you go.
Had to do that a few times. I can
Just a few times. I will end on my PSA. So we believe very much in preventative healthcare. So do me a huge favor and everyone go do something this week in the preventative healthcare realm, whether it's go for a walk or schedule that appointment you've been putting off or go get a colonoscopy.
Sure.
We're going to talk about it, and it's really important because it can save your life. So preventative healthcare.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you so much. So we also want to give a shout out to Tim and Alyssa and
Oh,
the wonderful
yes.
folks here at Rhubarb Market.
Market.
Thanks again, guys, for letting us film Coffee with the Mayor here and enjoy some great coffee and hot chocolate and whatever that thing
Oat
was.
milk,
Yeah, whatever that
bread,
thing was.
latte, delicious.
And I'm taking home a bunch of treats.
There you go.
Beef soup.
That's awesome. So catch Coffee with the Mayor every final Friday of the month. That's when we drop the episode on our YouTube channel. You can connect, I think, through the website, through our Facebook page.
Nice.
So yeah, we're again excited for this one, and we know Callie's going to do an excellent job.
Yes.
Tweaking it up and getting it ready for prime time. So until next time, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.